Welcome to the Asset Revolution podcast, where each week your hosts from Arbor Digital provide educational opportunities for financial advisors and individual investors to gain knowledge in this emerging powerhouse that is digital asset investing. The Asset Revolution podcast is your connection to the future of digital assets and an opportunity for anyone to get off zero. Let's dive in. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to the Asset Revolution podcast, where we go behind the headlines and get into what work is being done in the digital asset space and what is revolutionary and evolutionary about blockchain, crypto, and digital assets. So this week, I am very excited to bring on a very important person in the ecosystem who is doing a lot of great work with him and his team, Trevor Ward. Welcome to the podcast, man.
I'm good to be here, man. Yeah, it's awesome. I've been waiting to do this for a while. So also that intro was great. I'm like going behind the headlines. I like that. So much of the headlines are just like garbage, right?
Oh man, yeah, we can go in so quickly into those things, and I know we're gonna get into some really cool stuff today. But for the audience, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are.
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Trevor. I jokingly refer to myself as the world's most exotic accountant, mostly just because I'm a CPA, but really don't practice as a CPA, and I've had kind of an interesting career journey to get to that point. But I'm based in Salt Lake City. I've been here for probably around 5 years or so. Recently became a girl dad, so
oh, congratulations!
That's exciting. Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. If you hear screaming in the background, that's probably her just saying hi. Yeah, so it's my wife and our 6-month-old daughter, and I'm here live in my father-in-law's office, living with the in-laws, man.
Wow. Okay. Well, it
Yeah.
seems like a really cool office. I think we were jamming before this. I think I saw a really, really cool space. But yeah, appreciate you going in to kind of who you are a little bit. And you and I have been talking for, a few months now, because one of our North Stars at Arbor Digital is education. And it's not just educating people on the investment case for digital assets, crypto. It's just educating people on like what kind of this entire space represents, both from a tech side, from, just getting people to open their minds to a lot of things that we were limited to doing, is now we aren't limited through this technology that is blockchain and decentralization and open source and this whole new culture of those things. So that's where I feel like you and I really made some really cool connections before this, and a lot of the work that you and your company is doing. So I'd like to kind of dive into that to start off this episode. So tell us first the journey for you. Before you mentioned you're the most exotic CPA, don't really practice, but take us through a little bit prior to crypto. What's kind of been your professional journey?
Yeah, and man, it's been a journey for sure. So probably less traditional career path. But I started my career in public accounting at one of the big 4 firms in downtown Los Angeles, and I'm trying really hard to think of something positive to say about it. I think what was cool is like I got to see how different businesses worked from the inside, and I think that like I've never regretted starting in accounting, because it really is the language of business. And if you can figure out accounting, it's like, okay, I understand the language that these companies are speaking, but I hated it. I mean, it was like, I was an auditor, and it was what I always say is like, you can be the coolest auditor in the world and like be really chummy with the clients, but at the end of the day, they still hate you because you're an auditor. So anyway, that's a story for, did you lose my video there?
That's okay. Yeah, we
Okay.
did, but keep going. I don't know if you can get it back.
So that might be a story for another time. But I rage quit from from public accounting. Um, from there, went to a corporate foreign currency brokerage. So really, that's a mouthful, but essentially doing what a bank does, but only with foreign currency payments. So
Hmm.
helping big companies move money around the world, and that was really interesting. Like, got to sit down with CFOs and treasury teams at big companies and help consult them on foreign currency risk, things like that. Um, and then from there, went to financial planning and was worked for an RIA for a little while, and then somehow found my way into doing marketing for a smaller firm called Better Wealth. Um, so yeah, that was kind of like the progression of my career. And what's really interesting, similar to Arbor Digital, is if you ask me like, hey, where did like this journey into digital assets begin? It really was in I mean, it kind of started with the foreign currency brokerage, right? Because
Yeah.
you get an idea of just like, okay, the world is a lot bigger than the US and US dollars.
Hmm.
And I saw a lot of the inefficiencies, if you will, of our macro financial system, where it's
Hmm.
like you'd have a client that's like, I need money to be, we have money here in Europe and I need dollars in the US by Monday. And it's like Friday afternoon. It's like, well, sorry.
Good
Like,
luck.
yeah, good luck. Or even just like the volatility between currencies is a
Sure.
huge thing. And then, yeah, like once you get into personal financial planning, that just totally opened up my eyes, and like realizing there's so many things I did not understand about banking and the economy and inflation. And so that, like, I really just, as soon as I opened that door, I just
Hmm.
dove headfirst down into that. Um, so anyway, that's kind of like was the path up to digital assets. I can talk more about that too, but
Oh
um,
no, yeah, we're definitely gonna dive in, but I'd love to pause here for a second just to recognize this unique journey that you've had. And I think one of the pieces that we like to bring out in these is these types of stories, because I think a lot of people feel like, especially on the younger side, for me, I'm 37, I'm in that, kind of millennial generation, if you will. We feel like I grew up in a place where it's like you take the traditional path, you do all these things, you do this one thing, you get really good at it, and then you do it for the next 40 years. And then if you go against that, it's almost like this internal struggle with yourself. You don't want to disrespect, all the people who helped you get to where you want to be. But then you see that, man, there's just so much more to do and see and deliver value on than just this one little piece. And then when you take almost an interdisciplinary approach, which it sounds like, given your different experience, you now have this interdisciplinary experience where you can take all of these experiences to help you inform on how to add value, which I think is hugely valuable. And I think actually is probably where most work is going. Um, it sounds like that's kind of what's been a driver for you, are
yeah,
those elements.
yeah. I mean, I will like post on LinkedIn about this, and um, if like I have college students that say, "Hey, like give me some career advice," I think you absolutely still can make a great career as a specialist. Like you go really deep on one area, and a lot of time that's the traditional like accounting, or like you're going to be a lawyer or doctor. There's still like a really great spot for that, but I think there's a really strong case to be made for being more of a generalist, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it takes a certain type of like personality, because you can't just like be mediocre at a lot of things. But
Totally.
like I really truly like dove into accounting, and I dove into finance. Like I've done marketing, I've done sales,
Mhm.
and there's no way I would be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't have that range of skill set.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
there's an argument there.
for sure. Yeah, and I think the prevailing thing that I've figured out and learned was I think starting out, a lot of people, I was one of the people that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just kind of went in, people kind of said, "Oh, you seem good at this. Here, let me help you.
Yeah,
I'll take you in." But then you don't know if you actually like it, right? Like again, from so when I heard from your story, you had this path you were on, you went in, you're just like, "Oh man, I found out I hated it." And like that's okay. Like
yeah,
one of the things that's really cool is when you start off, it's okay to be a generalist because you need to figure out where your place is in the world, in your industry, wherever that is. And I think it's an important at the beginning because then that will lead you to the path of, okay, here's where I want to specialize. Because I do think that trajectory. So for me, I guess it's more of the pathway to get there. I guess for me, the way it was presented to me was more you start off specialized and then you stay there no matter what. Whereas now I think it's start off general and then go into all these different spaces your first 4 or 5 years. And then you can really figure out this is where my heart is, this is where my mind is, and this is where my passion is to deliver value. And then I'm going to go specialize for the next 20 years
yeah.
and maybe within that discipline. But anyway, I digress. I love it. I think it really highlights a lot of different cool talent that's coming into this space in your journey. So talk to us a little bit more now about why digital assets, man. What was the journey into digital assets and crypto?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I talked a little bit about just seeing some of the inefficiencies in our current financial system at a global scale. And I mean, we could talk all day about that, but I mean, we could talk about Swift and like how different banks communicate with each other and all that. Um, so that was like, without realizing that that's what digital assets was solving at first,
Mm-hmm.
like that was one of the connections I made later on. Um, and I also think like, and this is again very relevant to Arbor Digital, is I, as a my brief stint as a financial planner, and I've done tax prep and things, and I had the opportunity to see a lot of people's individual financial situations,
Mm-hmm.
and at times you just kind of feel like how do I help this person when they're playing this game of like saving, investing in a broken system, right? And that's not to say like I don't at all want to say like our whole system's broken, but there are a lot of things that are broken. And so um again, like I didn't make that connection right away. I was actually very skeptical at first of
Mm-hmm.
digital assets. Um, I'd say my first like real exposure to it was I actually worked with a guy at the foreign currency brokerage who's like one of the smartest guys I know, like very sensible, very research driven, and he was like, "Dude, you got to read this book, The Bitcoin Standard by Saifuddin."
Saifuddin. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, so I read it honestly thinking like I'm gonna like just tear this thing apart. Um, but it made a lot of sense. Like you read through it and it's like what's cool is like you can't learn about this stuff I think the right way without thinking from first principles and learning, like you're not just studying Bitcoin, you're studying the history of money and
Mm-hmm.
like what purpose money has served throughout time. So that was like pretty fascinating for me. And that just like, I mean, they call it going down the rabbit hole for a reason, right? Like, uh, kind of just started going really deep on Bitcoin, learning everything I could about that. Um, and then eventually, like, opened up into the Ethereum ecosystem and DeFi. And uh, DeFi was like a whole nother light bulb moment of like, wow, these are like this. solves a lot of the problems that I saw prior in my career. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, from there, it's like still just falling fast through the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And oh, I love that. And it sounds similar in some ways in terms of the progression from, Bitcoin standard, and then you start once you get down that rabbit hole, you're like, okay, what else is going on? And then you get into the theorem. But I think one thing you said is really important to highlight is this idea that the system is broken. And one of the things that I try to open, especially people who have built the current system and spent their lives the last 50, 60 years in that system, like this isn't a knock on the work that you've done, right? This isn't a knock to say
No.
that you were wrong or anything like that. And because again, it's a hard thing to say and come to the conclusion of to self actualize to say, you know what? Maybe we could have done things a little bit better.
Mm.
Maybe with new technology, I can see things going maybe more efficiently if we did it this way. So I think it's okay to say things and not to have this negative like it's broken. Like we're not, that's not an attack, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think
Yeah.
we still feel like when we talk with people to say, hey, there are inefficiencies in our current system. There are things that are technically broken. We don't go through an '08 financial crisis without something being broken, right? We don't
Yeah.
go through a lot of these things that, regulators are consistently enforcing without things being broken. And it's okay to realize that, hey, things are broken. That's okay. It happens with anything and everywhere. But the
Yeah.
idea is now, what do you do with that information? Once you get there, okay, what do we do? How do we progress? How do we take this to the next level? And I think you're slowly starting to see people who worked in that traditional system come to that psychological progression to say, okay, maybe there are some truths behind this. How do we elevate this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, I think there's a lot of things just with like our traditional financial services system and like the whole central banking idea and fiat currencies. Um, there are a lot of things that did make sense with the
Absolutely.
tools we had at the time, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and just similar to the internet, right? Like when the internet started, it was like, whoa, this is cool. Like wait 15 minutes for the dial up to get
Hmm.
going and then I can send emails, right? Like technology evolves over time and it's fascinating. And I think that once you realize, again, going back to like this idea of thinking from first principles,
Hmm.
it's like, well, why would I care to have like an open distributed ledger where everyone can see the, you know, comings and goings, transactions, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess we have had some privacy issues, right? Like, and
Hmm.
you can point to multiple things. Like, none of us knew what was going on prior to 2008. It was like after the fact, like,
Yep.
oh, this is what happened.
Hmm.
Um, or like the credit scandal, right? Where it's like, oh, like we trusted this institution to keep like our personal details safe and they didn't, right? And like that's I'm not like blaming them. Like stuff like that is going to happen, but if we can use technology to, you know, eliminate some of the negative trust or like the
Hmm.
situations where we're forced to trust but don't really want to, then why not explore that? So, but yeah, I think you make good points there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thank you to everyone who's spent their entire lives and careers like building our system that we now can build on top
Yeah,
of and make even better. Like, so anybody listening, any advisor, any financial professional, any banking, anybody listening, like, seriously, thank you so much. Like, we wouldn't be here without any of that. And it's nice to know, and that's where our responsibility now, where I want to get into a little bit, Trevor, kind of the work that you and your company is doing, is we're going to help elevate this and take the great foundation that's been built, take away maybe the toxic things, maybe the inefficient things, and see how we can make it better with technology. And that's all we're here to do. So with that being said, what in the heck are you guys doing? I know that you guys are so focused on education, which is so important. But what are you guys doing? What problems are you guys looking to solve? Where are the gaps that you see?
Yeah, yeah. So it really started with this idea that, or really the realization that our industry, referring to digital assets, has such a massive onboarding problem in the sense that, where do you send someone just to get the basics of digital assets, crypto, Web3, whatever? I mean, we don't even know what to call it, right? Like it's like
the
Web3,
the
crypto, like
yeah.
blockchain technology. Um, so it's just like, how do we solve that? Because I think at worst, and there's just a lot of really, like, there's so much hype, there's so much noise in this space. And it's like, if you just do a Google search, chances are you're going to end up on like a Twitter thread or a Reddit forum or whatever it is. Like, and some of those have good information. At best, you have, an exchange or someone like yourself or an institution, maybe like a custodian that is putting out like quality educational content. But even then, it's pretty fragmented.
Hmm.
So our whole goal is like, how do we essentially decrypt digital assets, cut through all the noise, all the hype, and give business professionals, similar to like with my background, and one of my co-founders is also a CPA. Like, how do we teach them about this stuff? Because I mean, and like even going beyond basics, right? Like, how do you teach a financial planner like where digital assets fit in their client's portfolio? Or
Hmm.
where, how do you teach an accountant how to account for digital assets? Because like there aren't really super clearly defined rules in accounting and finance right now. And fortunately, like we're starting to see some progress. Um, so that's what we really set out to solve. And it it's been an interesting journey, right? Because at first we're like, all right, we're going to create like the master class or the Udemy or Coursera or of digital assets.
Hmm.
But we realized like, and we've done a lot of customer discovery, right? Like you and I have had a conversation about this. We've just talked to a lot of companies in different verticals, particularly accounting and finance. Everyone wants to create content. They want to share their knowledge. Um, but we didn't see as much demand at the enterprise level to like, oh, we're going to go and implement like a training program, right?
Hmm.
So we're like, all right, well, why don't we? And this is this is crazy because we're like the first time I've really talked about our rebrand, if you will. So up to this point, we've been Digitas, which is also a multi-billion-dollar advertising agency. So there was that minor detail. But we so the rebrand essentially came with this idea of like we still want to decrypt digital assets, um, but we're going to just start by helping to kind of break down the silos of information, realizing like everybody has educational content, right?
Hmm.
Like if you are in this business, either as a custodian or a professional services provider, everyone is in the business of education, whether they want to be or not. Because you have to teach your clients, your customers, you have to kind of teach them the why, the what,
Hmm.
before they realize this is why I need your service. So essentially, what we are doing now is, you know, I hope that we can get enough content, and I believe that we will, to have the master class of digital assets. But in the meantime, um, we are transitioning to a essentially a marketing agency that partners with digital asset professional services firms. Really, the I like to call it like the less exciting parts of digital assets, right? Like it's
Hmm.
not a DAO, we're not doing NFTs, but I think it's legitimately what is going to move forward the mainstream adoption of digital assets. So just partnering with those organizations to do these webinars, right? Like
Hmm.
we'll create the essentially like, hey, you guys have the content, we'll market the event, we'll set it up, um, we'll help you. You know, we have insights from our audience on what they want to learn.
Hmm.
Also doing even just social media management, right? Like I've been really fortunate to build a presence on LinkedIn, and so helping them figure out like, hey, let's essentially do thought leadership as a service for you, but not like the fluffy like, hey, I'm posting about my product. It's like, no, you have knowledge that other
Hmm.
people want, so let's get it out there. So that's a little bit of what we're doing.
Yeah. And there, oh man, there's so many things that we could dive into, but I think one thing that comes to mind as you're describing it is, I think there's this idea in the digital asset ecosystem is that okay, we're in this traditional space now, and then all this technology, we're going to jump straight into this whole new Web3 world, which is DAOs, NFTs, tokenized assets. Everything's tokenized and lives on a blockchain. Like everyone thinks like we're going to go straight from point A to point Z. And I think that the pro there's a lot of different midway points that need to happen in order to get to that type of adoption. And so part of what's central to our thesis in terms of just the entire adoption of uh, digital asset ecosystem, which is not just digital assets, but is tokenized assets, which is new capital formation structures and DAOs, which is
Mm-hmm.
new membership, new customer acquisition and engagement. All of those things are going to be elevated with this space. And there's got to be those middle points. So the problem I think that I see that you guys solving is like, all right, we're going to help the adoption of this entire ecosystem by providing this service because we need that first in order to get to the next million users. We need to get professionals on board. We need to get professionals, any type of business professional, educated even just from a fundamental and basic standpoint of what it is. Not number go up stuff. Not you see a YouTube video, it says Bitcoin to go to 500,000 or, digital assets are going to go to 200 trillion in the next 3 years. We have to do better.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, that there's a need there. There's a gap. And you
Yeah.
kind of went into that. So am I missing things? Are there other things that you think is going to be from a value standpoint that you guys are going to bring?
Um, yeah, I think really like to simplify it, and you can tell I'm still solidifying like what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because at the end of the day, like we really want to, like this idea is that we want to work with partners in the industry to make knowledge more accessible,
Oh,
right?
I
And
love
so
that.
originally we thought, okay, well, we're going to go and curate and create all this content. The issue with that is like that takes a long time to to create all that content.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the minor issue of, oh, how are we going to make money in the meantime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so and I didn't even say what we were rebranding to, but we're thinking about names and we're like throwing out a bunch of ideas. We're like, what about uh, what about multisig, like a multisig wallet?
Mm-hmm.
And we all were just like, yeah, like, and the reason we latched onto that was because, and for those that aren't familiar, I'm sure there are a lot that are, multi-signature wallets are used to typically by enterprises, um, because it requires approval from multiple members in order to approve transactions. So
Mm-hmm.
they each sign that transaction. It's not, I mean, it existed prior to digital assets, and crypto wallets, but we had this thought of like, it really is a group effort to move forward the industry. And so we rebranded to Multisig Media, which
Whoa, is
yeah,
it? So you mentioned is this like the first drop of
this is
multi-sig
it.
medias?
This is
What?
it, man.
Wow. Arbor Digital Asset Revolution podcast turning into the place where the
Yeah.
announcements come.
Yeah, this is where, hey, if you've got a rebrand, they'll be your PR. No, it's funny that it lined up this way because I really wasn't planning. It was just like, well, I guess I can't go on there and say we're Digitas. But yeah, so we're officially Multisig Media, and go check us out, multisig.media. Really, still the same mission though of just decrypting digital assets. And I think as far as value add goes, I think it's just a win-win-win situation in the sense that these enterprises, like, again, they need to onboard their clients. They also have to onboard employees, right? Like, I've talked the other day, I was talking to a lady that has a tax practice, a digital asset tax practice. She's like, she's just like, please tell me you know accountants that understand digital assets. And I'm like, like I know a few, but like most of them are doing their own thing. And she's like, I tried to hire like CPAs with deep tax experience, like they worked at PwC, and it is just so difficult and time consuming to teach them digital assets. So I just started hiring like crypto degens and teach them accounting because that's easier.
Yeah,
And I'm
you did
like,
the reverse.
yeah, I'm like, that is insane. That it's like like accounting is not an easy thing to just like pick up. So I think there's benefits there. Obviously there's professionals that, going back to the whole career path thing, right? Like maybe if you're tired of just like the same old day in, day out, like I'm just at this accounting firm and I'm looking to shake things up. It's like, well, accounting hasn't changed for centuries and it's changing right now because money is changing. Same with financial services. It's changing. Like Arbor Digital exists because like our financial system is changing. So come and learn about it from people that are building in this space or they're serving companies in this space. And like suddenly you really kind of have a whole new career path before you. There's just massive amounts of opportunity if you can apply your traditional knowledge in finance and financial planning and accounting and like legal and regulatory data science. If you can apply that to digital assets, like it's like we're living in the internet era of early 1990s. Like the world is your oyster.
Or back when in the 60s and 70s as like modern portfolio theory or all of the investing standards, CAPM and all of these different models are being tested. Hypotheses are being tested, and you then do all of this work for years and years and years, and then you come out with all of these great things that are going to set the standard for the investment management industry for decades to come. Like that's why I get excited about this too. I've taken and as I'm sure you probably see, like when you studied and went through the whole process of getting your CPA, is a lot of these programs are dependent on that type of work. And what I like to tell everyone here, both from the institutional side and anyone else who will listen, is that work, that's like you said, it's unsexy work. Like no one, like Markowitz, when he was sitting there doing the work with his group, they tried so much. And it's really fascinating to hear like the story of when they were trying to market all of this academic research they were going to apply, modern portfolio theory, CAPM, all that good stuff. And nobody wanted any part of it. They were like, this is just, like it took so much, and there were so many different things that needed to happen in order for the standards to be adopted. And that was a big light bulb moment for me as to where we are currently in, especially specifically when it comes to like DeFi, asset management, investment management, and digital assets. Is that we are at this very, very early stage of creating the standards at which will power the investing and the financial, asset management that's going to happen in this new Web3 world. And that's going to be a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, if you are building, serving, doing anything in the digital asset industry right now, you are a pioneer, because chances are it hasn't been done before you. And maybe there's a couple, maybe there's a couple companies that you're doing this alongside with. But yeah, essentially, like, we are the ones that are figuring out uh, the accounting guidance, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and again, like, this stuff is not like the sexy, cool, like, hey, we launched, Bored Ape Yacht Club and
Mm-hmm.
made
Yeah.
like millions of dollars off of it. But like, at the end of the day, like, we can't just forget our past financial system. And it's not like accounting disappears, right? Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
talked to different accountants that say, like, oh, so like, there's no more accounting because it's all on chain now, right? It's a distributed ledger. I'm like, well, like, there are some efficiencies that come out from like having things on a block explorer, but then it becomes, you need to learn how to use all the different block explorers, and you need to learn how to use digital wallets as an accountant, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a new, and it goes back to like why you would hire a crypto degen over a CPA, because that's kind of a tricky, until we kind of nail down the UI and UX of like wallets and on and off ramps, and um, that's a new skill that you
Yep.
suddenly have to learn. Did not exist not very long ago.
Well said there. I think we've dove into quite a few things. I want to let a lot of this marinate in people's minds because this is a lot of really good information. And for people, and again, one of our goals on this show is to help people understand the work that's behind the scenes. And maybe I'll start calling it the unsexy work that's happening behind the scenes that you just don't hear all that about until after it's all done. And then you see a headline. Um, so what I'd like to end off with is take us through for you guys, for you personally, and I guess as a business, where do you hope to be in 3 years?
Ooh, good question. Um, I would hope that in 3 years, we are known as the connector of between enterprises and knowledge hungry professionals in digital assets. And like, if you want to go and learn digital assets, learn about the behind the scenes work, or if you're an enterprise that is looking for a way to build a brand, and that's the other thing, right? Is like, there's so many people doing really cool things like Arbor Digital, and like Bitwave is another one, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have a number of different partners that are building really cool things that aren't NFTs, they aren't DAOs, um, but like, they're so necessary, and no one knows about them because they just uh, they don't know. It's kind of just like almost the unsexy thing was like the afterthought of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, like, how are we going to do compliance? How are we going to do accounting? So yeah, just being known as like the connector and the educator in the space. And it's like, hey, if you whether you want to learn or whether you want to get your name out there and do it in the best way possible by educating others,
Mm-hmm.
then come to Multisig Media and we'll make that happen.
Love it. Well, you heard it. If you are knowledge hungry for digital assets or any of the work that's being done in the space, uh, Trevor, where they can go to your website you just mentioned. Where else can they get in touch with you guys if you get some of those knowledge hungry listeners here?
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn and Twitter, pretty active there. On our website, very shortly we'll have a sign up for a newsletter that we want to start putting out, just relevant, more industry digital asset knowledge, specifically around finance and accounting. But yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter. I rant and ramble on LinkedIn quite a bit, so on my personal page as well. So yeah,
All
those are the
right.
spots.
Well, cool. We'll put those links in. So what I love to end these episodes off are some quick fire questions. You can answer in one word or one line phrase. So what do you think? Are you down to go through
I'm
some quick
ready,
fire
man.
questions? Okay.
Fire 'em at me.
All right. I'm going to fire away. So first question, what is an accomplishment outside of work you are most proud of?
Uh, Family.
Best
Do I have
answer
to keep
outside
it?
of that.
Do I have to keep it at like one word?
No, you can do a
Okay.
line or a phrase.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, just creating a loving and being able to spend time, dedicate time to family.
Love that. Love that answer. Okay. What is something digital asset detractors get right?
Um, I'd say that there's too much hype. There's a lot of hype, lots of noise,
Mhm.
and probably that there needs to be more regulation
Well
and
said.
smart regulation.
Smart regulation. Good qualifier there. Yes. Um, okay. What is an influential learning resource? And I know so since you already mentioned it, you can't mention the Bitcoin standard. What is an
Yeah.
influential learning resource on digital assets or crypto that you think is a must for anyone coming into the space?
Oh man. Um, Again, it's very fragmented, which hopefully soon it'll be Multisig Media, right? Like it'll
Yeah.
just come here. But I think A16Z puts out a lot of really interesting stuff. Chris Dixon has a lot of really great ideas on just more like principles of what is Web3. Um, there's lots of other resources out there, like even just like Blockworks or CoinDesk or Decrypt. Some of these other publications
Okay.
are really awesome. Um, yeah, I think that's a good start.
All right. There you go. Okay. Last question. What is your biggest pet peeve about people in crypto?
uh, just the tribalism. I think
Mm,
there's so many tribes in digital assets that really make it very uninviting for the professionals. And I think it just comes down to closed-mindedness, right? Like,
mhm.
um, I think if we all were to like not be so focused on like, oh, like Bitcoin is the only invention, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if we could work together, that's going to progress the industry faster. And
Yeah.
what we all kind of rely on blockchain technology succeeding as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'd say the tribalism, the
Mm,
maxis.
yeah. No, that's definitely something we've seen here and totally align with you on that. There is a dark side to the culture of this entire space, which yeah, definitely hopefully that evolves over time and hopefully we can be a part of that evolution, right?
Yeah, it already is. I mean, it already is evolving for the better, I believe.
Yeah.
So we just got to keep it going.
All right. Well, Trevor, man, it's been an absolute pleasure jamming with you. We can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun. I love seeing what you guys are doing at Arbor Digital. I think it's really cool, especially for someone that's a CPA and been a financial planner. So you guys keep doing good work at Arbor Digital.
Man, well, thank you for that, and we feel the same way. We will be rooting for you guys. Maybe even possibly using some of multi-sig to where we can get They're both from an employee side. So I think there's a lot of synergy between that. So we're excited to keep going along with you in this journey, and we'll bring it back on the show. To everyone else who's listening, thank you for joining us. Reach out to Trevor and his team, and be sure to tell somebody today that you care about them. And we'll see you next time on the Asset Revolution podcast. Cheers, everybody. We appreciate you listening to this edition of the Asset Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Marc Nichols. Please don't forget to let us know how you like the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen. For more downloadable digital asset resources and educational opportunities, please visit us at arbordigital.io. We are here to help you get off zero safely and securely. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to tell someone you care about them. Cheers.
Financial advisor, unless you're under contract with or actively speaking with Arbor Capital Management or Arbor Digital, a division of Arbor Capital Management. This podcast is just that, a podcast. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice. If you have individual questions, please reach out.